In Dragon's Dogma 2, the endless cycle of the dragon and the Arisen was proven to be simply a form of entertainment for a deific creator. Once the veil was removed, the dark truth about the Brine was brought to light. It wasn't simply a game mechanic preventing players from open water navigation or taking shortcuts during their exploration, but something much more sinister. But before we discover the Brine's darkest secrets, it's time to give credit where it's due. Kudos to Sylvard for locating the Easter egg in the previous thumbnail. If you look closely, you'll see a Seeker's token in the bottom left corner. If you're new to the channel, I've started playing a game with viewers where I hide an Easter egg in the thumbnail of each of my videos. The first person to state what and where it is in the comments gets a shout out in the following video. Now, back to the matter at hand. Only moments after the Arisen's escape, we were introduced to the nightmarish presence known only as the Brine. As blood-red tentacles consumed Rook, we immediately learned to steer clear of the water. Anything deeper than waist level was a cause for concern, and if confronted with such a situation, a new path was to be taken. But what was the Brine, and what purpose did it serve? It seemed ever-present, almost as if it was watching the Arisen at every turn in his journey. Any body of water was capable of hosting the Brine regardless of location, but interestingly enough, it wasn't simply a ravenous creature in search of food. Schools of fish in shallow waters were plentiful and could easily satiate the hunger of such an omnipotent creature. Yet, many coastal villages had made a living out of this abundant source of sustenance. It also allowed beasts of burden to drink of its waters for nourishment without any retaliation whatsoever. It was clear the Brine was intelligent enough to distinguish between a threatening presence and, more importantly, the identity of the submerged individual. But more on this later. Harv Village was yet another example that came to mind when considering the Brine's bizarre behavior. Surrounded by the sea, and an economy heavily dependent on fishing, it was curious how the people of Harv Village had adapted to their circumstances. The Brine allowed the use of nets, fishing rods, and small vessels, so long as they didn't tread deep waters. This was a huge contrast to the violent manner in which it readily consumed beasts in their ilk. Within moments of touching the water's surface, the Brine hungrily devoured those foolish enough to not mind its presence. From goblins to ogres, no creature could free itself from the grasp of the otherworldly Brine, not even the Arisen. However, it's clear that being consumed by the Brine doesn't necessarily mean being devoured or killed by it. To illustrate, a beast or enemy creature that succumbs to the Brine is utterly destroyed within seconds, leaving no trace behind. But if a pawn finds itself similarly covered in writhing tentacles, they are simply forfeit and return to the rift from whence they came. Although this could be attributed to the unique manner in which pawns experience death, the Arisen's interaction with the Brine is even more intriguing. Instead of suffering a great loss and instantly dying, the Arisen is carefully transported to the nearest safe location unharmed. It's almost as if the Brine is consciously returning the Arisen to his intended path, a path that he must not stray from lest the world be undone. Speaking of those who wish to forge their own paths, the Rivage Elder of Harv Village was quite the character. Upon speaking to him, it was apparent that his weren't the ramblings of a madman, but a man who had gone mad for witnessing the truth. His theories on Talos and the unmoored world were fascinating, but none compared to his explanation of the Brine and the true purpose it served.
'Tis common knowledge that the Brine halt any ships seeking to venture into open waters. As if to say, there's naught out there, so don't bother looking. But does that not strike you as rather miserly? Even if we are to believe that there's naught across the sea, why must we be kept to our shores? I should like to confirm for myself if there's truly naught to be found, and why shouldn't I? An old man with naught, sailing out into a sea of naught, and dying for naught. Where's the harm in that? When I said as much to the Brine, they only stared at me in amazement. A lie, it may all seem, but 'tis the honest truth. I've beheld it all with my own eyes.
Interestingly enough, The Rivage Elder explained how the Brine wasn't simply a mindless creature devouring anything in its reach, but rather a sentient being that served as a deterrent to any curious enough to venture out into the open seas. If this were true, then why was the Brine keeping the people of Vermund and Batal stranded? What was it preventing them from discovering? Were other civilizations just beyond the horizon? And most importantly, who was controlling the Brine, or at the very least, dictating its curious behavior? The answers to many of these questions remain a mystery. However, upon breaking the cycle, the Arisen saw a glimpse of the Brine's dark nature and learned of its true purpose. The Brine was the ever-present agent of the Pathfinder, the active force that guided the actions of every character who had a role to play in each version of his never-ending tale. It quite literally served as the puppet strings that manipulated all who resided in this world, thus creating the illusion of free will. The Brine, however, wasn't limited to a singular form. The writhing tentacles represented its inescapable grasp and its alien nature, but it often preferred a much more menacing presence. Abominations such as hideous dragons, grotesque worms, and even its champion Talos all served to maintain the narrative that the Pathfinder had written for each iteration of the world. The Brine was the product of a sadistic creator's twisted imagination that used fear to extinguish the hope within the people, the ultimate deterrent force. For countless ages, it had done its job all too well, and the masses lost all desire to question what lay beyond the horizon. All but one. The Rivage Elder was determined to answer said question, and with the World Forge destroyed, the sea was free from the once inescapable bonds of the Brine at last. What new worlds would the people discover? What new mysteries would the Arisen unveil? Only time would tell. And that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe. It lets me know you want more content just like this. Click on these videos on screen to continue your journey through the world of Dragon's Dogma 2, and I'll be there to guide you when you arrive. Consider becoming a member for exclusive perks like emojis, members-only videos, and more. Or check out my Ko-fi page if you want to support me in a more personal way. Until next time, it's the Inhuman One, signing out. Join the Inhuman community today.